Ladies and gentlemen, Magnus Carlsen is a good chess player. I know that might come as a shock to many of you, but in fact, he is so good that he frequently cannot play other grandmasters on equal terms. What I mean by that is, a lot of the time that Magnus Carlsen plays games online, he's drinking. A lot of the times that Magnus Carlsen plays games online, he's got loud music, he's surrounded by friends, and a lot of the time that Magnus Carlsen plays games online, he plays ridiculous gambits, absurd openings, and is frequently dead lost in the first 10 moves. According to the computer, he gives his grandmaster opponents odds during live games and still wins over 80, if not 90% of the time. In today's video, I will be showing you a gambit that he played against 3 very good people who will go nameless just to preserve them. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 times that Magnus nerfed himself to the point of being completely lost in the first 5 to 6 moves and still made a comeback. And he won all these games. If you like videos like this, I already have a few that I'm thinking of making in the future, of Magnus playing complete, like just getting to dead lost positions and then making comebacks. The first one was against the European IM. Now, speaking on behalf of all international masters in the world, I will be our spokesperson. We suck. There's a reason we're not grandmasters. Unless we're young, then we're going to be grandmasters in the future. Now, I'm sure the person playing with black is a fantastic player. This is the Magnus Carlsen gambit. Pawn to c3, and you would think, oh, well, you know, he's going to... Queen a4 check. Queen h4. King to d1. Pawn to f3. Queen to e1. This man, Magnus Carlsen, spent the first 6 moves of his game rearranging the king and the queen. You know, I gotta tell you, man, that's hard. That's not Tetris. You can't just hold it here and then jump around and jump around and jump. This man dedicated 6 moves to get this. He is completely lost. I mean, it's not close. Now, his opponent has to win. It's a speed game. It's a faster time control. It's not playing this in the World Chess Championship. But it's so fascinating what comes next. His opponent, principled man, develops the bishop. Now Magnus does, you know, what can he do? He can't really fight in the center. And if he plays moves like d3, he's going to really sabotage his long-term development. So instead of that, Magnus plays g4. He uses what he has. He plays g4 and h4. And now he's kind of threatening to trap the bishop. Not exactly, because the bishop could always take the knight. But, you know, it's move 10 almost, and Magnus hasn't made a single piece move. His opponent plays h5, so of course Magnus goes here, and now Magnus does in fact play d3, because even though the bishop is blocked this way, it's going that way. It's -3, and Magnus hasn't moved a piece, and he's rearranged this king and queen. I mean, this is utterly dumb stuff, right? This is just dumb stuff. Knight c5. Knight d2. Knight h3. His opponent is playing a perfect game, by the way. I mean, just completely restricting him. All right, Magnus plays knight to f2. Now the opponent plays queen d7 and bishop h3. And now, does his opponent want a light-squared bishop trade, or is it better to keep your light-squared bishop on? Well, e4. And now the queen cannot take the pawn because of the odd configuration of the white position. Queen to e2. Knight goes to e6, looking to jump to f4. Magnus take, and goes for a queen trade. Now, if you trade queens in this position, almost all of the advantage for black is gone, which is nuts. So, because of that, the opponent says, no, I'm not trading queens with you. I'm going to try to get my knight to c5. The problem with putting the knight there is Magnus now plays knight c4, and then plays bishop e3, and the advantage has been nearly cut by like 50%. Black castle short. White plays rook g1. Now Magnus has attacking ideas. Opponent, seeing that, decides, all right, I'm going to go bishop c5. Now even more of the advantage might be going away. And Magnus, to his credit, despite having a king in the center. Now, I would here play king c2. I would not even think, because my king is in the direct line of sight. Magnus just takes the pawn, completely unafraid of what's coming down the E and D files. He's like, look, this guy just can't beat me. It must be an insane feeling to sit down at a chessboard, whether virtual or real, and just think, they can't beat me. Knight e5, queen e5, a big trade, and Magnus puts his knight in the center. He's not even worse anymore. His king hasn't moved off d1. He played the whole game without moving his king, and he's up a pawn. Now, black is still better. Make no mistake, black is still better. Black is still better because white's king is, in fact, in the center. a3 and things like that can shake things up. But after rook d8, king c2, black is almost not better at all. And at this point, as a player with black, you are completely demoralized. Black plays queen d5, centralizing. Magnus now plays rook g2. The computer here for white wants white to play a3, which seems nuts. Magnus plays rook g2. He doesn't make pawn moves that are not necessary. Opponent plays queen f5, trying to put the knight on f4. And if you realize, this is the first time in the entire game since it started that the position is equal. Rook e1, now of course it's a speed game. We're not going to have a perfect conclusion by any means. King b1 though, and that's it. Black plays b5, Magnus plays a3. Black is now never going to play b4, and Magnus is better. Officially, fully has consolidated, and now the avalanche will roll back the other way. So first, d4. And that's a problem. It's a problem because if black plays the move c4, he's permanently admitting he will never break through. Rook here, GG. So he takes on d4. Magnus takes with the rook. Queen f5 pinning the knight. King moves out of the way. Now Magnus is not even equal. He is better. Rook d4, queen d4. Queen d4 was an inaccuracy because the computer likes rook e5. I don't know why. The computer actually preferred that in this position, you don't take the rook, and instead you have a very nice tactic. And after rook takes rook, you have a Zwischenzug, which Magnus missed. He missed the tactic in a blitz game. It happens. Of course, as a human, you just snap take, but here you should always look for checks. Your only check in the position just so happens to lead to you winning both rooks. It's a very nice tactic. So you can find a tactic that Magnus Carlsen missed. Queen takes d4 though, and now a fork. Queen e4, forcing a queen trade, exactly how you simplify the position. And en passant, rook b4, and he wins all of his opponent's pawns. Rook stops the h-pawn from advancing. And I mean, this is so unnecessary. The pawn is 2 squares away from queening. He doesn't need to do that. He could have run back this way, but he wanted to stop knight h4. Magnus calculates that he can sack his rook, and the pawns cannot be stopped by the knight. This is sick stuff. He is a sick man. I mean, look at this. This is disgusting. I mean, this is heinous what he just did. Look at the position after 10 moves. This is ridiculous. This is a titled player with black who's like nearly 2,500 FIDE. Now, the craziest part about this was Magnus wasn't doing this with white only. He had done this with black too. I mean, this is unbelievable. To do it with black is just even more utterly disrespectful. And this is a GM. All right, this is a GM with white. And again, these are speed games, so it's not that serious. But I mean, to do the reason it's worse to do it with black is you're inherently down a move with the black pieces. So you're like, there's an extra move now for the opponent, not the other way. The other way, at least, it was a little different. Here, white decided, all right, I'm gonna not let Magnus consolidate. I'm gonna try to attack the center right away. Magnus immediately locks the center, right? He plays d5. What's funny is that his position is so bad, the computer thinks knight d5 just wins. Like, if white had found knight d5, probably this would not have been a game included in this video. And the idea is that you want queen a5 check. If king d7, I think there's like a forced mate somehow. Queen d5, king c7. But if you play b6, that's like a scholar's mate trick. So after knight d5, Magnus wouldn't have taken. But his opponent didn't see that. So Magnus went e6, and now is still losing, but at least the center is harder to get through. So the opponent plays g4, taking space where possible. And h4, all right? Now pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, and the central situation has been more or less clarified. So nothing can take, nothing is going anywhere. Of course, there are sacrifices possible. I think white is going to try to play for c4 or f4, f5. Magnus plays king c... This is so absurd. And then his opponent plays knight g5, and Magnus just goes h6. He's like, what do you want? Oh, well, the idea was not to go back to f3. It was to go here, and the opponent is ready with the cannons, right? But look at the eval. Now, Magnus's next move is utterly ridiculous. Like, of course, in this position, you play b6, right? You play b6, bishop b7, rook d8. That's what you do. Of course, in this position, you play king b8. You try to hide your king. This man, Magnus, in this position, takes the pawn in the center of the board. I mean, this man is a lunatic. This is deranged chess. Completely. Utterly. Completely. Because now you just get pinned. Magnus is like, so what? But then there's knight e4. I mean, surely you're dead lost, right? If you take this, it's queen d6. It's mate in a few moves. Literally, by the way. Geometrically, you get forced back, and you get absolutely brutalized. So you cannot take the knight on e4. And you have to play knight f7. Now here, white, of course, takes with the knight. Take. But how does white going to break through here? It turns out it's not so easy. You know, rook e1 is possible. Bishop e5 is possible. Queen b4 ideas. White plays c4 to try to play for c5. Which also makes sense. But Magnus now strikes back. e5. White should go all the way back to h2, because in the game he doesn't do that. White goes here, and now Magnus is not worse. He's not worse because the way you have to relieve the pressure on your position in this position is you have to trade pieces. Knight e4. That knight was the Achilles heel of the black position. Just a moment ago, that knight was going to be hunted mercilessly by every piece, and now that knight has come alive, and that knight is going to capture its attacker. Knight takes g3, and when the dust settles, Magnus is not worse anymore. And this is the moment in the game where I imagine all great players looked at god-level players on a field. Like how players might look at Messi or Ronaldo or Haaland, because he's the greatest player of all time. Or how, you know, you look at LeBron on the court and you go, uh-oh, that's probably something bad about to happen. Or how you look at when Nadal or Djokovic hit another level. White plays rook e1, Magnus plays knight e4, and it's time to take over. All right? And White tried to keep his focus. Rook is coming down. The knight is coming back to protect the king. But Magnus set a trap. And unfortunately, his opponent fell into the trap. The best move here for White was undeveloping the bishop to put pressure, to give up this for this. His opponent, unfortunately, took on d5 and went here. And that move, unfortunately, loses on the spot, or fortunately, depending on who you're cheering for, loses on the spot to this. Check, king. The first tactic of the game came 26 moves into it, and Magnus spotted it immediately, and that's that. Like this, it's over. And, you know, you gotta kind of give credit, considering he's fighting back from a position that looks, you know, like this. Like, you gotta give the man a bit of credit, because he gave his opponent castling, central domination, expansion on one full side of the board, and he took a pawn, which basically started an avalanche, and he still won the game. Now, what happens when you try to disrespect the sensei? This is the last game I will show you. What happens if you know what's coming and you do something extraordinarily peculiar to stop it? You see, Magnus's opponent knew what was going to happen. So what did he play? b5. b5. That stops queen a4. What happens if you stop the Magnus Carlsen gambit? Magnus Carlsen will go to ridiculous lengths to achieve this gambit. f3. And now, You stopped queen a4, queen h4. What you failed to realize is the sensei always has a backup plan. King f2. King e3. King d3. King c2. Queen e1. King d1. This is disrespect. This man, Magnus Carlsen, walked his king up and around the position against a grandmaster. And then he won this game. d3. In fact, he hung his h2 pawn. But I personally think he saw this and thought, that pawn's not worth saving. If I try to save that pawn, I'm sacrificing my own activity. In fact, look, if you play pawn g3 and stop bishop takes pawn, it's -4. This is only -2.4. That's very instructive, that you can lose a full point of material, but because your opponent wanders into your position, there's things like queen h4 and bishop g5 and e4, and that's exactly what he does. Magnus uses this moment where the black position is a little bit uncoordinated to strike down the center. We have bishop to g3, getting out of the way and attacking the queen. The queen goes here to try to play to g5, and the opponent should kind of relax here. Black is feeling a little bit jumpy, like a young martial artist, all right, trying to fight, you know, the person that's not striking. Like, trying to fight against the person with their hands down. You feel like you got to, you know. So he plays d4. The problem with this move d4 is that you are completely relying on Magnus to do this and open up all of your lines and then allow knight c6. But when you play d4, that's your only idea, and this is now rock solid. We just saw in the last game what happens when Magnus gets to have this rock solid formation in front of his king. Now he just plays queen g5. His opponent plays knight bd7, gambiting the pawn on g7, so Magnus says, okay, f4. Now I trapped your bishop. Good job. Remember how a few moves ago, you thought you were stealing from me? You thought you were breaking in to my farm and stealing one of my livestock? Yeah. Well, now you're locked inside the farm. Now you're the animal. Yeah, in a cage. So now, or I don't know, maybe pasture-raised. Maybe Magnus has a pasture-raised farm. f4, the bishop goes here. The knight now comes out with tempo, and black has to go bishop e3. So what does Magnus do? Take, and look at this. His center has survived, so he slides back to win this. Now here, to his credit, black did not get overwhelmed. Black played the best move. There is one pawn holding together the white center, and it's the pawn on d3. So black, of course, being a grandmaster, played the move c4. Great move. And now Magnus is still fighting back, all right? He's definitely still fighting back in this position. He's trying to consolidate. Again, if the people play perfectly, this video doesn't get made. Black plays knight c5. Not a perfect move. Knight back to f2, defending this. Black plays rook d8, and this man Magnus in this position plays the move g4. He is still attacking. To his credit, wounded, in a bad position, sabotaging his own play, he does not care. b4, his opponent tries to walk him down. c4, closing down the center of the board. Black plays e5, Magnus plays f5. No, you can't get at me. Rook d4, bishop g2, defending everything in the position by the skin of his teeth. Black continues trying to get in. Rook b1, you can't touch me. Now in this position, apparently you should sack the knight, which would lead to this position. But even here, Magnus could potentially be able to defend himself. It's not good, but it's possible, right? Black plays queen d6 though. Magnus plays g5, pushing the knight back. And this man Magnus, in this position, runs his king. Runs his king. And the opponent plays knight c5. Opponent's done everything right. Magnus plays rook h3, safeguarding the third rank. And now the opponent's like, I don't know what to do. This is ridiculous. I've put all my pieces on the right squares. I can't break through his position. Your confidence wilting. All right, your self-doubt growing. Your anger at Magnus for playing like this against you sky high. So he tries to break out on this side of the board. That's the first mistake that he has made in 27 moves of play. f6, immediately punishing him, because you can't actually take this because of the pin, and if you take this, I'm going to get an outside pass pawn. So this guy goes g6. Magnus plays this, take. Oh my goodness, that pawn is 2 squares away from queening. Magnus plays queen h3, ready to escort the pawn to promotion. King e7, knight g4, the queen. Look at black's position. Look at the pawns encroaching, but the rook goes back to d8. Now, if Magnus makes a queen in this position, black is going to play take, and this king just can't survive. He just can't survive. So what does he do? He doesn't blunder. He just plays knight e3. His opponent plays bishop c8, but failed to realize the move knight e3 set up h8. Why? Because the bishop goes to attack the queen, but takes its eye off of knight d5. So if the move h8 is played now, and rook h8 is the response, white can play this, because the bishop that now attacks the queen no longer hits d5. Oh, this is just sick. This is sick. This is sick. And now Magnus brings the queen back and is up a piece. Black plays king f8, knight d5, take. Now Magnus is up a rook against all odds. And now here comes the rook infiltrating. Rook g8 check. And black loses the queen. And the only life lesson here, folks, is don't stop Magnus Carlsen from playing the Magnus Carlsen Gambit. In this position, black resigned, as there are 3 possible checkmates. 4, if you count both of those being promotions. Oh my God. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the Magnus Carlsen Gambit. Now get out of here.